So resistancerecess.com. I am really happy to be joined coming up in a couple minutes here. Senator Jeff Merkley, a true champion, a stalwart champion of people power, of progressives, of fighting for us, we the people, against the big money interests. Jeff Merkley, who just a few days ago spent 15 hours on the floor of the Senate talking, filibustering against the stolen seat being given to Neil Gorsuch. And Senator Merkley is just, he's a true champion. And I'm incredibly happy to be joined by telephone by Senator Jeff Merkley from the great state of Oregon.
And the guest host is
Senator Jeff Merkley is going to be joining us on the phone. Senator, are you there?
I am.
So it's a really heavy news day. Thank you for making the time to speak with Tom's listeners. And just, again, thank you for your efforts with a 15-hour filibuster. I'm seeing on the news that Justice Gorsuch was just confirmed. I say that he'll always have an asterisk next to his name. But can you tell us a little bit about what you saw happening there?
Yeah, this is a very dark day for America. This is the first time in U.S. history that a seat has been stolen on the Supreme Court from one president and delivered to the next in an effort to pack the court. The court packing was just completed moments ago on the floor of the Senate when he was confirmed with 51 plus votes. But after the rules had been changed in order to close debate, also with a simple majority rather than the 60-vote standard that has been in place. And what this does is open up the window for any additional, nominee that President Trump might put forward to be done from the ideological very far right, as was Neil Gorsuch. And it also means that every time there is a seat open, and a majority party of the Senate will look at the question of whether they can use the same tool, that is, to steal the seat. All this greatly undermines the legitimacy of the court. And you mentioned that this judge, Neil Gorsuch, will have an asterisk by his name. Think of all these 5-4 decisions, these anti-labor decisions, these anti-environment decisions, these decisions that will continue to allow the flow of dark money that will be occurring because of Neil Gorsuch in this stolen seat. So we'll deserve an asterisk, and I hope people will continue to refer to that each and every time such a 5-4 decision comes out. This entire theft of a Supreme Court seat was driven by the desire of the Republicans elected through the Koch brother money to keep that dark money flowing. That's the issue they really feared. They felt if Merrick Garland actually got a hearing before the Senate, he would be confirmed, and they didn't know where he stood on this. They wanted to have a justice who was fully vetted by right-wing groups and where they knew that they would sustain this dark money that's corrupting our elections so that they could continue to control the elections. So that's why it's such a terrible for we the people vision of our nation. Those who want government buy-in for the most powerful, those who don't care about labor laws or environmental laws or human rights issues or equality, whole host of things. Well, perhaps this is a good day for them, but in my mind, it's a terrible day for our we the people republic.
I couldn't agree with you more. And just on that issue of dark money, of just this flood of big money power corrupting our elections and the legislative process, and now really the Supreme Court, there were $17 million spent to steal the seat from Merrick Garland and give it to Neil Gorsuch. And Senator Whitehouse brought that up in the confirmation hearing. And Neil Gorsuch said, "Why don't you ask them?" Which was so insulting, because the whole point is you don't know who the them are. And now he's going to possibly rule on business that could have a bottom line impact for these people who gave $17 million to install him in that seat. That is just not the way that our democracy is supposed to work.
No, it's absolutely terrible. And if you look at Neil Gorsuch's decisions, time after time he has twisted the law, he has tortured the law in order to find for the powerful over the individual. We saw this in the frozen trucker case, where the law is designed to protect a truck driver from getting fired when he refuses to operate a rig in a dangerous fashion. But this trucker was fired when he refused to operate the rig in a dangerous fashion. And the Neil Gorsuch wrote a minority opinion and said, well, no, if we define the word operate to mean operating just the cab instead of the entire rig, well, he did drive it a ways to get warm, so we can't say he was fired for not operating. So it doesn't fit. You have to really search for the ability. I mean, he refused to put that trailer on the road. He refused to drive that rig with frozen brakes, and he was fired for it. That was the story. And everyone else disagreed with him, but he looked for the one tortured way he could possibly find for the company. Or the case of the autistic child, where the law was written specifically, the IDEA Act was written specifically to make sure disabled children get a appropriate education, and he twisted that to say all that's required is merely more than de minimis, which is a fancy way of saying a microscopic more than nothing. And we had actually just 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court looked at that case, and they overturned Neil Gorsuch 8-0. Even the conservative members of the court said that is absurd, but he had tortured and twisted the law so that he could rule against an autistic child getting an appropriate education. And there's just case like case after that. And that's just such a dismal situation, even before you know that he's going to do great, devastating opinions against women's rights to reproductive health, and devastating opinions against consumers who are seeking to use class action lawsuits. We know this because we saw his earlier rulings on it. He created his own arbitration design when there wasn't one in order to keep a person from being able to sue a corporation over predatory practice. This is really a terrible moment.
Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon, just a true champion, and he spent 15 hours filibustering. And I want to say that from the grassroots and activist perspective, they stole, the Republicans stole this seat, and they got Justice Gorsuch confirmed. He has an asterisk, and a key part of being able to just, I feel, have that asterisk there is that the Democrats, you included in your leadership on this, really stood with the people and fought as hard as you possibly could. And you spent 15 hours making sure that all of this is in the record so that everybody knows exactly who Neil Gorsuch is and why the Republicans stole the seat to give it to him. There's so much news today, Senator. I want to give you some time to talk about Syria and what just happened. I just had Ben Wickler from Move On, and we were saying now more than ever, we need people to raise their voices and demand that Congress is allowed to do what the Constitution says it's supposed to do, which is deliberate these issues of war and peace.
Absolutely. It's essential that before the president undertakes any ongoing military campaign in Syria, that he consult with Congress and seek congressional authorization. That is required by Article 1 of the Constitution. That is required by the War Powers Resolution. I think the American people are deeply wary of being drawn into another war in the Middle East. And so we owe the citizens of this country, even apart from the constitutional issues, a full discussion of the range of options. And certainly the goal should be a diplomatic resolution that ends the war and ends Assad's reign of terror.
So, what we're saying, what I was just talking with Ben about is how people, when recess happens next week, there's this great opportunity for people to raise their voices all around the country and just let all of their elected officials know where they are, what they want, and demand that their elected officials remember that the people are their bosses. Can you just tell us from your perspective in the Senate, Has the grassroots raising our voices and demanding, has it been effective in terms of what happened with Trump Care and a host of other things? Do you feel like the grassroots is having an impact?
Not just an impact. They won the battle over Trump Care. I mean, the fact that so many millions of people took to the streets, took to the phones, took to emailing us, writing letters, appearing in the halls here in the Congress, it really rattled the Republicans. And they watched the popularity of this Trump Care strategy drop enormously down to 17%. And that's a sort of normally you have a 30% unpersuadable, and when it 17%, you're losing the base, the Republican base that will march to any tune played. You know that it's in trouble. The idea that they're going to pass a bill that would throw 24 million people out of health care and would destroy rural health care, because the clinics and the rural hospitals have thrived under the Affordable Care Act because their uncompensated care dropped dramatically, and because we pumped a lot of money directly into the rural clinics. And so it isn't just the individuals who would have lost access, it's also the entire community would have been damaged by closing clinics and closing hospitals. So it was the grassroots that carried that message, made it happen, and just a huge thank you to everyone who's listening for weighing in and being part of that. But here's the thing, we're going to need you to weigh in again, because they're trying to resurrect Trump Care or Ryan Care. Neither one of them wants it called by his name, which should tell you a whole lot about just how bad it is. They're going to try to resurrect it. And so we are going to have to keep beating it down. We would love it if they would work with us to make the existing system work better, to have a public option, to be able to buy into Medicare, to take on the high cost of drugs. We're not really optimistic that that will happen. I think we mostly are going to just have to stop them from doing very bad things to our healthcare system.
So I just thank you for making it so clear that the people's voices are heard. In the last minute here, it's not just on Trump Care, it's on all of these that the people need to raise their voices now more than ever, especially on critical issues of war and peace. I always say the most radical act that a person can take is to get organized. What are the most effective ways that people can make their voices heard in the Congress?
Well, the first is continue what you're doing, because it worked. Think about leveraging your voice by using your social media to reach out to people in other House districts or other states, because friends and family members, if you write to them and say, this is what's happening, this is unacceptable, please call your House and Senate members in your respective part of the country. That is a huge motivator. Friends talking to friends, family talking to family, that is the most effective thing you can do. And use any association you have. You're a member of a fishing group or a wildlife group or a nursing organization or any professional association. Use your association to send a bigger message, to publicize the issue among the association, and to weigh in the halls of Congress as well. But let me add a third thing, and that is get involved locally. Engagement is deadly to the Republican agenda. They thrive on people being disengaged, and so we need people to run for local office, get on the local community board, to go to a local board and advocate for 100 by 50 plan. That is 100% clean and renewable energy by 2050. That's real action.
Senator Jeff Merkley, thank you so much for joining us on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back.